Okay, great. So I think we're gonna make a start. I know that loads of people signed up for it. They're probably waiting for the recording. I do appreciate that it is quite early on a Sunday morning. So thank you so much for coming and thank you for your time. So let me just firstly introduce myself. My name is Jiawei. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tuli, and I'll be your host today. And at Tuli, we have the vision of bringing healthcare closer to you by transforming pharmacies into community health hubs. So before we start, I want to let you know that this event is being recorded. We will share this with you later on, so please share it with your friends for those who couldn't join us today. And we will share with our network as well. So the objective today is to create a semi-formal setting for knowledge sharing. So it's one of the first few webinars with the aim of sharing health tips and how to improve our lifestyle. So today's focus is on how women's health impacts weight loss. So first up, we have Rachel Howatson, the founder of My Embodied Co. As a professional nutritionist, she will providing insights on the factors that influence weight loss in women. She will also guide you on making sustainable habit changes and offer actionable steps regarding exercise and diet. Then I would like to share some of my insights from our own PhD research, which will focus on the impact of maternal obesity on the health status of offspring. And each presentation will be followed by a brief Q&A session, so be sure to have your questions ready and type in the chat box. Since there are not many of us, so do feel free to also raise your hand and maybe show your face and question as well. So we're very excited to have you here with us today, and we can't wait to dive into the discussion. So now let's first start with our speaker, Rachel. So over to you, please, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be here today. First off, I just want to say thank you, Tuli Health, for having me here today, and for all of you for taking time out of your Sunday morning to be here with me. So I am the founder of My Embodied Co., which is a holistic health and wellness business. And our mission is to empower individuals to cultivate confidence and strength while educating and inspiring them to embrace health and authenticity into their lives. So I am a fitness nutrition specialist, a health coach, a registered massage therapist, as well as a certified personal trainer. So today, what I'm not here to do is give you a quick fix. I wish I could, but unfortunately that just doesn't exist. But what I am going to do is give you actionable steps, some guidance, some more knowledge and insight, so hopefully you can feel empowered to make changes that will lead you to sustainable health and well-being in the long term. So this is what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over some factors that do affect weight loss. We're going to talk about why understanding your reason behind weight loss, or just whatever it is for your health and wellness, and understanding your body, why that's so important. We're going to talk about sustainable habit change, physiology of what's going on in our body, some nutrition and how to fuel our bodies well, exercise, and of course, some actionable steps you can take away from today. And we'll end with some comments and questions as well. And I do just want to say that if you are embarking on any sort of health and wellness journey, weight loss, if you do have any other coexisting conditions or anything serious going on medically, please always talk to a medical professional before you embark on this journey. And one thing I want you to think about, whether that's through today or through the next couple of days, weeks, whatever it may be, is just some words that come up for you when you hear the words weight loss. Our mindset is such a big contributing factor to our progress and to our outcomes. So really just taking note of what comes to mind when you hear that, if it's more negative, more positive, and just kind of taking some time to understand that for yourself. So first things first, factors affecting weight loss. As you can see here, there are so many. It is not just nutrition and exercise, although those are two main ones that are mostly talked about. There are all these factors here, such as age, ethnicity, genetics, metabolism, your mindset, your gender, your sleep, your stress levels, all of that contribute to the effectiveness of your weight loss journey. And especially as women, or just women or people with menstrual cycles, our needs vary so much more than men. And unfortunately, a lot of studies that have been done are on men. So it kind of negates a lot of what's going on with our hormones. Our hormones dictate everything that goes on in our body, and it's a very under-researched topic. Thankfully, there's more research being done now, but our hormones play a huge role in our weight loss and our health and wellness. And this can often be a reason why we don't see the results we'd like or that we'd expect. So moving on from that, we are going to talk a little bit more about understanding your why as well as your body. So I could give 10 people the exact same plan, the exact same nutrition, exercise, and everyone would look and feel so differently. So it truly is really important to understand the why of your body and your own reasoning. And weight loss is not a good only metric for measuring your progress, unfortunately. I think it can be a great one, but not all weight loss is equal. So if you are on a weight loss journey, you really want to be focused on, are you losing fat or are you losing muscle? And the main goal would be to lose the fat and preserve as much lean muscle mass as you possibly can. So you can actually change your body composition and maybe have more lean muscle mass and less fat and weigh more. So that's why weight can be a bit of a tricky one if you're only using that to gauge your your progress. Listen to your body as well. Whenever you're on any sort of health and wellness or weight loss journey, listening to your body is so key. The professionals, such as myself, we have maybe certain knowledge that you don't have. However, no one knows your body like you do. So take everything with a grain of salt and really take what resonates and leave the rest, and learn to trust what your body is telling you, because your body won't lie to you. And I want to also just, reconnect, build that trust, and really understand that if you have a menstrual cycle, you have all these hormones, and this is going to impact everything. I'm going to sound like a broken record because I'm going to say this a million times throughout the day. But things like tracking your cycle and starting to understand how you feel in each phase of your cycle, and when you maybe need to fuel a little bit more or ease off the exercise, it's all really important in terms of understanding what your body needs. And some questions you can ask yourself too in terms of kind of understanding your reasoning for being on this journey is, what got you to where you are now? Obviously, there's certain habits that led you to want to make changes with your health. What habits no longer serve you? Because at the end of the day, if we're not changing kind of our root habits and behaviors, it's going to be really hard to make sustainable change. And how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like it's a trek and a journey and so difficult on this journey, or do you want to find ways to make it fun and fulfilling en route? And lastly, why are you committed to making these changes? Are you committed or are you just interested? So they're two very different things. So really being honest with yourself about where you're at in your journey. And so on that journey, sustainable habit change is, in my personal belief, one of the most important things to focus on. So to create sustainable habit change means finding what works for you. So again, taking everything you've been told with a grain of salt and really looking at your life, meeting yourself where you're at, and just finding what that looks like for you. And that may be starting very small, and that's okay. But to set yourself up for success, it usually means starting with the smallest micro change and just building and building on that bit by bit and piece by piece, and slowly over a long period of time, you're going to see great results, which is where the whole consistency piece comes in. If there's one thing to take from today, it's just to stay consistent with those small little steps, because small steps over a long period of time will trump short bursts of intensity any day of the week. Habit stacking is a great way. It's where you add new habits onto activities that you're already doing. So using, say, brushing your teeth as your cue to do a few squats, or incorporating a glass of water with every meal just so you get that hydration in. So just using something that you're already doing in your day and adding one small thing on top of it, just so you can stay consistent and be reminded of that. Another thing that I really love to focus on is addition over restriction. I think especially when we're talking about weight loss, we often think about all the things we shouldn't be eating or can't eat. But really thinking about addition. So maybe instead of focusing on all the things you can't eat, it's saying, okay, you know what? I don't think my body's getting quite enough nutrients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more vegetable into my day, a few more fruits, a bit more hydration, and just focus on adding in the things, adding in a bit more movement as opposed to just that restrictive mindset. So that can help spin it into a bit of more positive light while you're on your journey, because anything health and wellness, weight loss, it's not easy. It takes a lot of effort. So having the most positive mindset you can is going to go a long way. And lastly, stress management is key. Cortisol levels can increase weight gain as well. So really focusing on that stress management for both your mind and your body is very key. So what is weight loss anyways? So a bit of a physiology here, just so you can get a bit of an understanding of what's actually going on in your body when you're losing weight. So when you increase your breath rate, your respiration, that is actually what helps you lose weight, which when I found that out, I was shocked. But here's what's happening is, if you think about, say if you're eating fats and carbohydrates, those are made of physical carbon chains. So what happens in the digestion process is one of those carbon molecules is actually going to be breaking off, and that's what's going to be used for energy. However, when it breaks off, it creates an acidic environment, and our bodies like to be at a homeostatic and equilibrium, and too much acid in that environment is not beneficial, and our body can't thrive in that state. So what happens is we breathe in oxygen that binds to that free-floating carbon chain, and then as we exhale, we actually get rid of it. And because it's a physical carbon chain, when you release it, it has a physical, actual measurable weight to it. And so the amount of carbons you exhale will be related to the amount of weight lost, which is related also to metabolism. And that is all the chemical reactions in the body cells that are converting food into energy. So we'll talk a little bit more about understanding the metabolism piece of this through your total daily energy expenditure. So your total daily energy expenditure is comprised of 4 things, and it is exactly what it sounds like. It is just the amount of energy you're expending or putting out throughout the day. So it's comprised of exercise, activity, thermogenesis, or EAT, and that is just a fancy way to say it's the energy that you expend through physical exercise, whether that's a run, a long walk, workout at the gym. That is all contributing to what you expend in a day. A less obvious one is the thermic effect of food. And again, just a fancy way of saying digesting your food, consuming food actually is a very large chemical process and physical process. So there's a lot going on, and your body is expending a lot of energy to digest the food that you are ingesting into your body. You then have your basal metabolic rate. So that is the energy expended just to keep your basic body functioning. So that is if you were to lay on your bed all day, not lift a finger, your body would still be burning a lot and using energy just to keep all your physiological processes, breathing, heart pumping, all of that in check. And then lastly, non-exercise activity thermogenesis is those small micro movements in the day. So it's not planned exercise, but it's things like fidgeting, reaching for your water bottle, getting up to go to the toilet. So all of those things, again, add into the total daily energy expenditure. And so that's kind of, again, more the physiology side of it. We're going to move back to a bit more action-oriented steps moving forward here. But some other key understandings of what can impact weight loss are things like thyroid, your sleep and stress, and another thing I want to emphasize is why diets often don't work as well, which is related back to thyroid. So your thyroid hormone, T3, is often impacted when we do a lot of diet. So if you are underfueling your body, what's actually going to happen is your T3 hormone is going to start to decrease, and that is the main regulator of your hormones, of your metabolism. And so when that decreases, because you're underfueling your body just says, hey, you know what? We're actually not getting a lot in. We don't really need to work as hard. So when you lower your metabolism and then start increasing more food again after that diet period is done, you slowed your metabolism down, which is why often people gain a lot of weight back. It's because they've actually slowed that metabolic process of their thyroid hormones. So that's kind of why the diets don't often work and kind of how the thyroid impacts that. And then sleep and stress is such a huge one. If there's one thing to start with on your health and wellness or weight loss journey, it's definitely focusing on these 2 factors. So often sleep deprivation as well as stress, can signal more hunger hormones and less satiety hormones. So all that is to say is you're going to be more hungry and it's going to take longer to feel full, which clearly if you're trying to lose weight, that is not the process that we want to have going on. So those are three key things I really want to emphasize for today. And then a little side note that this is a reminder for myself, hopefully it resonates with you as well, but is to stop comparing. So again, so much of what we learn is, and what's done in science is based off of research in men, not women. And it's very easy to compare, thinking that we need to be as muscular as men or be as strong as them or work out like them or just do things to keep up with them, when in reality, we have a completely different physiological process. And from a fat standpoint, men only need 2 to 5% to sustain their base functioning. But because of our extensive, confusing, complex system of hormones, we actually need 10 to 13% of body fat. And that is just to maintain our base physiological functioning. So that is clearly such a big difference, and it just shows the complexity of the hormones and why we just really can't compare to men, but also we can't compare to other women as well, because everyone's needs are so different. So again, this comes back to just understanding your own body and letting go of that whole comparison game, because it's not doing anyone any favors. So let's talk a little bit now about something you're all probably here to learn about, is nutrients and fueling your body. So I'm always a little bit hesitant to talk about tips about nutrition, only for the sole reason of we are all so different, and I cannot give you an overarching plan of this is going to work for you. It truly is a lot of listening to your body, playing around, and finding what works for you. And so what I will give you is a few kind of base principles, and from there you can take those and kind of build upon them in a way that you see fit for you. So carbohydrates are actually the main preferred energy source for our body. I think they often get a bad rap, and that's mostly the ultra processed carbohydrates, you know, the white rice, the white pasta, the cookies, the cakes, the donuts. All of those things are the ones that maybe you want to steer clear of most of the time. But carbohydrates are what our body wants to use as fuel. And typically they say 45 to 65% of your diet should be comprised of carbohydrates. And then proteins are essential, especially if you're on a weight loss journey. Increasing your protein intake is one of the most beneficial things you can do. Proteins are built of amino acids, and that gives structure to everything in our body. They're basically the building blocks of life, which is why they're so important, especially when you're trying to build, say, lean muscle mass. And that should be about 10 to 35% of your daily intake. And lastly, fats. Also, some of them maybe not as great. However, there are a lot of healthy fats, you know, and avocado oil, olive oil, those sorts of fats are so necessary for our body. And those should be about 20 to 35% of your daily intake of macronutrients. So if you're going to focus on anything, it's having a balanced diet. So trying to make sure at each meal, if you can, getting a little bit of each of your macronutrients, and just eating whole foods. If it comes from nature, if it's fresh, if it's whole, you know, whole grain, fruits, vegetables, if you're eating most of that, you know, nuts, seeds, you're probably going to be feeling pretty good. So I think if anything, it's the ultra processed anything is to steer clear of, and anything that is whole from nature, unpackaged, is probably a safe bet. And then it's just within that, figuring out what exactly you want that to look like in your diet. But those are just some general rules that should leave everyone feeling good. And it's not even just about what we're eating, but it's also about how we're eating and our mindset around our food as well. So often, I don't know if any of you can relate to this, but often if we start to restrict something, we start to crave it even more. So I am a firm believer that you shouldn't have to completely cut out anything, at least not forever. It's really all about balance at the end of the day, and your mindset around what you're eating and how you're eating it. So even too, if you're eating super quick, if you're not in a rested state when you're eating, that's actually going to be a lot harder on your body from a digestion standpoint, as well as it's going to be harder to extract all the nutrients that your body needs. So sometimes it's not even about necessarily changing your diet, it's about changing how you're eating what you're already eating. So that can look like being in a calm state before you eat. So maybe you take 3 to 5 big breaths in through your belly before you even start eating to get yourself in kind of that rest and digest state. Maybe you take away distractions, no phone, no TV, and you really just focus on the food you're eating. And maybe you just focus on eating slower and really chewing, tasting the food, smelling the food, and really making it a full experience as opposed to something to just get through or to do on the run, which I know we all have to do at times. But the more calm you can be in while you're eating, the better it is from a nutrient absorption standpoint. And intermittent fasting, I think, is kind of a hot topic right now. And I will say it can be very beneficial in terms of a weight loss standpoint, because you are still getting all your nutrients in just in a shorter feeding window. However, with women, it can actually be pretty detrimental to our hormones if we do that all of the time, because there is some more extensive ways to fast or really long fasting periods, and that can really wreak havoc on our systems and on our hormones. So I would say an easy way to kind of incorporate the fasting just to give your digestive tract a break is just to leave at least about 12 hours between your last meal and your first meal, and that's just a great reset for your body, because just like we need to rest to replenish, our digestive tract also can't be overwhelmed all the time. So it gives your tract a break to actually just reset and be ready for the next day when you're fueling again. And last main piece, again, exercise, such a big one that, again, everyone's different. I can't give you one prescription because I don't know what your injuries are like, what your schedule is like, but some base recommendations are typically 150 minutes of low intensity cardio per week or 75 minutes of higher intensity. And with strength training, you want to be doing every muscle group 2 to 3 times per week. So that's the ideal or kind of the baseline for general health. However, meet yourself where you're at. And that may look like just 10 minutes of walking or a bit more standing in the day to start. And that's totally okay. I think the key is just getting more movement into your day-to-day routine and building that habit, regardless of how much that looks like. Just start small and build from there until one day, maybe you are up to the 150 minutes and 2 to 3 times per week of strength training. So it's just starting small, meeting yourself where you're at, but knowing that that is kind of a general baseline just for general health. And one thing I really want to emphasize is, especially as women, we're not supposed to train the exact same every single day of the week. So we have so many hormone fluctuations throughout the month that our body needs different things. And so if you're trying to do high intensity exercise every single day or 4 days a week, but your body is fatigued and you're not losing the weight or you're not feeling good, it could be because too much high intensity exercise in certain phases of our cycle can actually cause our bodies to go into more fat storage mode. So again, there is a time and place for it all, but just again, going back to listening to your body and maybe taking a few days out of the month or a week out of the month to do that lower intensity exercise and give yourself that time to replenish and rebuild. So then you're ready for that high intensity, but you don't have to do it all the time. And also depending where you're at in your hormonal life cycle. So if you're menstruating, if you're premenopausal, menopausal, that will also dictate what type of exercise is most beneficial. So I know it can be confusing when you're going through life and all of a sudden your needs change, but that is just the nature of our bodies. They're forever changing and we need to learn to adapt to those needs, which again comes back to listening to our bodies and understanding what they need. So a little bit kind of going back to fuel, combining that with exercise. So what's actually happening from kind of like a fat carbohydrate burning perspective when we exercise? So when you're exercising with a certain intensity, if you increase the intensity, the energy that's used from carbohydrates goes up. And then when you were at your max intensity, you cannot give any more than you possibly could. 100% of the energy that is used is from carbohydrates. That is because it is our most readily available source for energy. And when you're going max intensity, your body doesn't have any time to wait for fat as a fuel source. And then more fat on the other side of it is going to be burned more at rest and with lower intensity exercise. And you'll often keep burning fat after high intensity workouts because your glycogen is depleted after your workout. So your body is going to start breaking down that fat to replace these muscle glycogen stores. So all that is to say, if you're doing super high intensity exercise, you're burning carbohydrates, but you'll continue to burn fat after when you're resting, which is great. But if you do lower kind of steady state cardio, walking, lower intensity, you're going to be burning fat during that stage of exercise as well. So again, time and place for everything. And lastly, I want to leave you with some reflection questions and some actionable steps that you can take that don't really take much out of your day and hopefully kind of light a little fire and get you thinking maybe in a slightly different way. So one thing you can do is start to channel your future self and what you want to feel. So if you think about where you're at on your journey now and where you want to get to, really think about where you want to get to and think about what would that person be doing? What would they be feeling? And how can I start channeling that today? Because you have to take the steps today to become that person. So start living into that now. And that's one of the most beneficial things you could do. Again, we talked about this a bit earlier, but discover what habits no longer serve you. Kind of think about maybe what you're ready to let go of and what you do day to day that maybe isn't helping to get you to that next stage. Increase more of what you're already doing that brings you joy. It doesn't have to be anything new, but you can just increase some of what you're already doing. Set reminders on your phone if you want to stay hydrated more, if you want to get up and move more. Set reminders on your phone so you don't even have to think about it, and you can just kind of automate that for yourself. Having an accountability buddy is great, someone that will check in on you and someone that you can lean on maybe when times get tough. Focus on your breath, just tuning in, maybe focus on longer exhales to calm the body and just taking note of what your body is doing from a breath standpoint. Setting SMART goals, so goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And lastly, just move your body in some capacity in a way that feels good. Eat whole, nutrient-dense foods for the most part. And lastly, show yourself compassion and be patient, because health, wellness, weight loss, it's all such a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and it's also not linear. We often want it to go like this, and it's often an up and down roller coaster. So just the more you can show yourself compassion and patience, the more enjoyable your journey is going to be. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you for the excellent talk, Rachel. Do we have any questions from the chat box? So we'll open the questions to the floor. So
Okay.
we've got one question here. So quite a few actually. So what is a good formula for setting goals for ourselves which incorporate more than just exercise and diet?
Oh, I love that question. Nice one, Maddie. Yeah, good formula. I think that's a great question. What factors impacting weight loss? What's a good formula for setting goals? I think one thing to, like I talked about, is kind of the whole thinking about your future self thing. It's thinking about not just exercise and nutrition and all of that, but it's thinking about your mindset around it all and just kind of thinking about your future self and maybe what actions they would be taking and living into day to day, and try and trickle that into all aspects of your life. Because again, weight loss, it encompasses lifestyle, it encompasses stress, it encompasses sleep. So I think really just taking a look at your mindset around all of those things, your mindset around weight loss, and then just really taking note of how that trickles into all aspects of your life and kind of start there and then build. Hopefully that kind of answers it. And how do rest days impact weight loss? Oh yeah, rest days are one of the most important things for weight loss, which I think is very counterintuitive. But in terms of a replenishing and rebuilding standpoint, if you think about when you're building micro tears and stuff during your workouts, if you're not giving yourself rest days to actually incorporate that and let your body recover, you're actually doing more detriment, and you're not going to reach that full potential because you're not allowing the time for replenishment, which is actually where the progress is really made, is in that rebuilding and replenishing. So the amount of rest days you need will definitely differ depending on the intensity of your workouts. But yeah, rest days I would say are vital, and you'll definitely hit a lot of plateaus and not reach your goals if rest days are not being done often enough or effectively. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks. I actually got a question. So it's very
Yeah.
so you mentioned about listening to your body. That's
Mm-hmm.
really good. But what do you mean by that? Can we kind of dive deeper into that? Because sometimes, your body can trick you as well, to trick you want more. And there's so much food, we have a lot of patients that's with us, and they just say, I just can't control it. And I just
Mm.
even though I know I don't need the food.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, and I think you're right. I said it a lot, and I said it as if it's an easy thing to do. It's really not. I think it's just so often, I think we're told certain things will be good for us, and we don't take the time to actually think, is this working for my lifestyle, or does my body actually feel good? For me, what that looks like personally is taking time to check in with my breath, because again, I might think, oh, I'm good to go for the day. I'm like so energetic, but my heart rate's really quick. And then there's actually some like anxiety there. So it's tuning in to be like, okay, I actually need a second to breathe before I go on with my day. Or it might be, I'm told nuts and legumes are really healthy for me, but I actually, if I were to take 5 minutes after I'm done eating, oh, actually, you know what? I do feel a little bit more bloated, or I actually don't feel as energized after I eat this food. So it's giving yourself kind of the time and the space to really feel how your body's reacting. But it is hard when the mind can get in the way, like you said about, you shouldn't do certain things, but you still feel like you have no control over that. And I think that's kind of a whole separate topic. But I think if you can just give yourself the space to kind of just feel without your mind, but just feel what your body's doing, whether that's through your breath, digestion, and just kind of giving the time to actually listen to the physical cues that it's giving you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's good. Yeah, that's a common feedback from a lot of patients. They said, "Oh, I know what to do, but it's just find it difficult to do." And
Yeah, yeah. I was just going to say one more thing on that. I think kind of understanding your why behind what you're doing is also really helpful in that case. Because I think, again, if someone else is telling you you should do this, you should do that, but you don't actually have a reason, like a deep reason where you feel motivated and inclined to do that, like nothing externally can kind of help you get there. It really does have to come internally, and that starts with having a very strong reason of why you do what you do, not just relying on what someone else says you should be doing. Because at the end of the day, it's pretty empty if you don't innately have a feeling of motivation or drive for that.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Another thing you mentioned about habits, and we
Mm-hmm.
all know weight loss management, it's not a one-off, it's actually a lifestyle change. And you mentioned about consistency,
Yeah.
very important. But a lot of people get good habits. I mean, they might do it for, say, 3 to 6 months and then revert back to their old habits again. So do you have any tips? So how to not revert back to the bad habits and continue on the new habits that's been formed?
Well, like we just talked about, having a really strong why, because I think if you're really set on knowing from like a deep standpoint, this is what I want and need my life to look like, it's going to be easier to stay on track. However, I think a lot of people, when they start off, myself included, tend to go kind of all or nothing and make a lot of changes all at once, which can become unsustainable. So that's why I kind of emphasize starting small, which is less exciting and less fun, and you're going to see changes not as quickly. But again, if you change maybe your whole diet and your whole exercise plan, that can be pretty daunting and a lot. So maybe that stage of your life for those 3 to 6 months, that was feasible. But when things change, you haven't really addressed the root behavior, or you don't have those small little things you can still do every day that make you feel good. It's kind of that all or nothing mindset. So I think just starting small and not building on until you feel so solid in that first or second change that you've made. Don't build on until you feel like that is innately part of your day-to-day life, and have shown yourself that you can kind of maintain that. I think that's kind of a sustainable approach, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's brilliant. So basically starting small, stay focused.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, would you be able to walk us through like maybe a successful case and how you helped with a certain individual and how successfully help them to manage their weight?
Yeah. I think the first example that comes to mind is actually less about the weight loss piece, but more about changing body composition and mindset around food and how that impacted their general health. Is that an okay example to share?
Yeah, please. That would be really exciting. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think I'm sure a lot of us can relate, not feeling fully confident in our bodies, maybe having some challenges around control with food or the types of food we're eating. So I was working with a client who generally was quite healthy, but there were certain changes in body composition that she wanted to make. She wanted to feel a bit more toned, a bit more lean, lose a little bit of fat, but more so feel less stressed around food. She had kind of gone through phases of being scared to eat carbohydrates or only eating a keto diet or feeling really guilty every time she ate something sweet. So she's really struggling more with the mindset piece around food. So we kind of built a plan together around what the blocks were for her and kind of where that stemmed from. And I gave her a bit of education on why fueling your body more with certain types of food is actually really beneficial. So what we did was we changed how she was eating, a little bit about what she was eating, but we actually got her eating more, and she lost the weight and she made those changes was because she was eating more nutrient dense foods. She was more full, so she was snacking less, and she allowed herself the freedom and kind of had the trust in her body to know that I can eat more food that is healthy food that is good for me, and I can still lose weight. Like I don't need to eat less and I don't need to be scared to eat those foods. So for her, it was a complete 180. And then she started to see the changes that she wanted just by making those small micro adjustments, and feels a lot more free around what she eats now, a lot less stress, and yeah, is happy with those changes. So
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think definitely the relationship with food is quite an important piece. Maybe that's like a separate conversation. We can maybe have a
yeah.
separate webinar just
Yeah, for
on the
sure.
relationship with food. Do we have any more questions from the audience before we move on? Okay, great. Thanks. If anyone has any other questions, please do write in the chat box. Otherwise, you can also write emails to us, and we'll get all that answered for you from Rachel. And then also, this is Rachel's contact, and there's website donation. There's so many QR codes. You can just pick one to scan. So thank you so much, Rachel. So now we're gonna dig into. I'll give it just a short talk on my research. I thought it'd be quite interesting to share. Just to give you a bit of background of what I do. Oh, hold on. Yeah. So I got a clapping from Madeline. So thank you, Rachel. So a bit background of me. So I actually did my medicine at UCL, and then went on to do a PhD research specifically on the topic of the immune mechanism of developmental programming of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And for those of you who don't know what non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is, it's a part of the metabolic syndrome and usually associated with obesity. And generally, people who are struggling with obesity probably also have mild to moderate fatty liver disease as well. So today I'm going to dive into the topic just to give you a bit more background of how the maternal obesity affects the offspring status in general. So you're probably going to ask, like, what is developmental programming? Sorry, Candy, would you mind just change the slide? I don't think it has moved. Next one, please. Thank you so much. So you might think that sounds really fancy, and you just think, oh, developmental programming, is that something to do with computer? Is that programming? It's not really. It's what we say is based on Barker's hypothesis, and is saying that exposure to environmental stimuli during a plastic period of life may impact the risk of certain chronic health conditions during later life. In another word, it means during how we develop as a human from, say, even from when we were a cell and to embryonic stage and then to adulthood, any insults or stress we experience might actually increase our risk for certain chronic conditions. And for that one, the maternal obesity is a huge factor. So it is what we know is that 2/3 of women who are in the reproductive stage age are overweight or obese. And here I just want to highlight that, and it's also still on the increase. And we, from our research and also from the review papers, that we found that the children born to obese mothers are at a higher increased risk of being born large for gestational age. And then which can cause miscarriages, certain conditions at birth, and various other comorbidities. And there's also increased risk for developing obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes in adulthood. So the origin of certain metabolic syndromes can trace it all the way back to where the mother's health status. So here I just want to quickly run through 3 critical windows that we want to watch out for. And that is the preconception, like I said, when we're still at the what we call the germline level, when we're still inside of the mothers, and then also to the stage that we're being born. So that's prenatal, perinatal, and also postnatal. So we always talk about the obesity related to that we have a fat gene. That is partially true to a certain extent. And from one study that comparing, look at all the data, that the obesity can be caused by a single gene, and there are certain genes that are associated with obesity, but that is generally quite rare, and there is not due to the environmental influence, and generally just have one gene that's associated with a higher risk. But most likely, in more cases, it's multiple of genes interacting with each other and leading us to have higher risk of obesity and metabolic syndromes, which we call it polygenic obesity. So now we just go to the prenatal stage and what the factors can actually affect offspring health status. So one of the things I thought I'd just knowledge sharing key fact that we have this organelle which is associated with metabolism and lipid process. It's called mitochondria. They're really small, almost like the shape in that yellow, and it has a little cristae where processes happen. And we only inherit mitochondria from the mothers, which means the mother's health status can have a direct effect. There are several studies actually suggest that when the mothers are having obesity or have a certain stress, the cristae and also the shapes and the dynamics of the mitochondria are affected, which means when we inherit that mitochondria from the mothers, to a certain extent, our mitochondrial composition are also affected. And then now we're jumping to the perinatal effect of the maternal obesity. As I was talking about earlier, can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry, and Candy. So as I was talking about earlier, so there is the fat genes, or the interaction of multitude of genes and causing the increased risk of obesity. But when it comes to just one generation, how the mothers affect the children, and that's not to genetics, but largely due to epigenetics. For those of you who don't know what epigenetics is you can interpret it as that we have a set of genes and DNAs, and certain environmental factors and stimuli happen, which turn off or turn on certain gene expressions and causing certain effects to happen. And it is found that offspring epigenome is very sensitive to maternal obesity, and it can influence how genes are being expressed. And that's part of the base of my studies and research at the time. So there are certain genes that's really affected by maternal obesity. So firstly, the maternal nutrition alters the expression of the hypothalamic genes. And the hypothalamus is a region of brain that modulates satiety and also the metabolism. So if that's affected, it means that our energy modulation and also impact our energy intake. Also, another thing is the maternal obesity does affect the expression of dopamine and opiate-related genes. Dopamine is often related to addiction and also how we interpret like these needs and wants. And also opiate-related genes, in fact, also related to satiety and appetite. So if you combine it all together, it's during the maternal obesity, during the pregnancy stage, the multitude of factors can really impact on how genes will be expressed and impact on our health as adults. Another thing that's quite interesting is perinatally that how our immune system is affected by the maternal obesity. So so essentially the obesity can also be interpreted as a bit of as inflammation, and there's studies that show that when the children from the obese mothers, their immune system are affected as early as the first trimester, and they have increased immune response. They also have the increased immune cells density and numbers, and then that really impacts our adulthood later on. And it is shown that offspring from these obese mothers tend to show much higher inflammatory profiles. This increased interleukin IL-6, which is inflammatory marker, and also TNF alpha as well. So the high-fat diet also during pregnancy really reduces the uterine blood flow, and it really increases the placental inflammation. And during my study, I demonstrated that there's decreased efficiency of how the children take the nutrients from the mothers, and as in fact, predisposes the children for any metabolic syndrome later down in life. And we have shown that the the children at the third trimester already show early signs of fatty liver disease, where you have excess fat deposition in the liver. And as we know, that liver is in fact a very important immune organ in our body. And then we run to the postnatal stage where the breastfeeding happens. So we found that in the breast milk of the obese mother, there's an increased concentration of the leptin. So leptin is this protein that's associated with satiety and appetite. And at the early stage of the offspring, their neural system is still quite immature and very sensitive to what's been given to them. Because the leptin is orally available, so as the children suckle on their mother, they do get affected by the health status of the mothers as well. And there's been evidence that the cross-fostering of children children fostered onto mothers who are obese actually have increased inflammatory profile, whereas the children that's from the obese mother that suckled onto the lean mothers also have the decreased profile. So they're further demonstrating that the postnatal period with breastfeeding is quite important period. So I know my talk is quite short. I just want to give a flavor of how the maternal obesity can really impact on the offspring health. So in conclusion, really the prevalence of obesity in women at childbearing age is increasing worldwide, and that really needs our attention to address into the certain matters. And the newborns of the obese mothers are predisposed to being overweight or obese, and the impact of obesity can be transmitted across future generations. I just want to quickly share with you a quick diagram of showing what's going on. So in fact, when you're pregnant, you're also pregnant with your grandchildren. So what child will you eat? And then follow the Rachel's advice. And yeah, so if you have any questions on how the maternal obesity impacts your children in the long term, yeah, do ask questions. So I know mine is really short because I want to keep it brief. So I just wonder any questions on the ground, please.
I don't have any questions that came up right away, but I just want to say that was super fascinating. So thank you so much for sharing. I feel like that was very, very eye-opening in a lot of ways. So thanks for sharing. I'm definitely intrigued to learn more about that. So thank you.
Yeah, it was quite brief, so didn't want to dig deeper into the science aspect, but yeah. So if anyone has more questions on the maternal obesity and how that affects the children, do let us know. Great. I think this is quite good. So yeah, so thank you very much, Rachel, for joining us. A lot of insightful knowledge. And as a token of appreciation for everyone's attendance, we would like to offer you a special discount on the Ultimate Woman Blood Test for your checkups. And if you're facing problems of being overweight, you're also welcome to learn about Tuli by scanning the QR code and the weight loss program. And so following today's webinar, we'll send you an email with all the relevant information and resources discussed today. And if you have any further questions or feedback about the event, please do feel free to reach out to us via email. And also we would love to hear about what your thoughts and feedback about this webinar on the social media channels. So don't forget to tag us. That's Rachel_Howatson and also Tuli_Health. And I will be thrilled to hear from you and to continue the conversation. And thank you and have a good day. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks everyone for attending. Bye.